The title of this video might sound a little bit intimidating, but I promise you this is going to be a fun and easy one. What I want to do today is follow up on something that I said not that long ago. Back then I was talking about the new features of Pro Tools 2023.6, in particular the possibility to use 7th order Ambisonics tracks within Pro Tools Ultimate. I also said that you could use that in order to implement head-tracked binaural monitoring of multi-channel audio within Pro Tools, but I stopped short of showing you how to actually do that. So today we are going to do exactly that. We're going to work with Pro Tools, we're going to work with multi-channel audio, we are going to monitor multi-channel audio binaurally with headphones, and we are going to do everything with head tracking in order to be fully immersive. But first of all, hello everybody. In case you're new here, my name is Michael Wagner. I'm a digital media educator with more than 30 years of experience in higher education. And on this channel, I talk about digital media, game design, and spatial audio. Today about head tracking with 7th order Ambisonics. If any of those topics interest you, I invite you to subscribe or join our Discord community. Email link is in the description below, or there's also a QR code here somewhere. But before I get started, let me briefly talk about what Ambisonics audio is, just in case you are new to that particular topic. In this video, I'm going to stay very simple and very brief. I did a number of videos about Ambisonics audio that go into a lot more detail. If you're interested, I encourage you to watch those videos. I'm going to leave links in the description below. But in its simplest form, you can think about Ambisonics audio as a way to encode spatial audio such that it can be easily processed by a computer. And by easily processed, I mean, for example, that once you have the spatial audio converted into Ambisonics, rotations of the sound field are very, very simple and very, very effective and very, very accurate. And we're actually going to take advantage of that. Now, the most important thing to understand here is that Ambisonics comes in different orders. And these orders sort of describe the resolution with which the spatial audio is encoded. The higher the order, the higher the resolution. It's similar to an image. The higher essentially the resolution that you have, the more accurate the image will be. And here's the same thing. The higher the order of the Ambisonics audio, the higher the resolution of that spatial audio representation. Now, in traditional applications, you usually go up to 3rd order. However, Reaper always had the ability to go up to 7th order. And now, since Pro Tools 2023.6, Pro Tools has the same capabilities, and we are going to use that in order to implement head tracking. And I'm going to demonstrate that in 2 different ways. First, I'm going to show you how that works in Pro Tools, and then we're going to switch over to Reaper and do the same thing in Reaper. And you can then decide which one is the more elegant or the easier one, and which DAW is the better one to work with 7th order Ambisonics. And with that being said, let's get started and hop into Pro Tools. Now, I'm going to work on a Mac today, and the reason for that is very simple. If you have ever worked with Pro Tools, you know that Pro Tools is not a pleasant experience on Windows. So whenever I use Pro Tools, Mac is a must. And what I want to do is I want to just have a multi-channel audio track that I can then monitor binaurally with head tracking with the use of 7th order Ambisonics. And for that, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new track that can hold the Skydust instrument, and I'm going to use a 7.1.4 track for the purpose. Now, there's no particular reason why I'm choosing 7.1.4. It's just a very common surround sound format these days, so let's choose that, and let's make that an instrument track, and let's say create. And then let's add an instance of Skydust. And the reason I'm using Skydust is primarily because it is the only instrument that I have that can actually directly output to 7.1.4. Now, once again, this is just for demonstration purposes. You would normally have some audio that is a multi-channel format, maybe an entire project that is a multi-channel format that you would want to monitor binaurally with head tracking. But for the purpose of this video, this project is essentially one track with one instrument. So let's add that Skydust instance here. Now, at the moment, I wouldn't really hear anything because I don't really have a 7.1.4 output. I only have a stereo output. So the next thing I need to do is I need to make sure that the setup is completed. And for that purpose, let's go into the setup section. Let's go into input-output settings, and let's add under the bus section a new path. And I'm going to make that a 7.1.4 track, a bus, and this bus will be responsible for converting the 7.1.4 signal into binaural, and we're going to go through 7th order Ambisonics in doing so. So let's create that path, and let's say okay, and then let's the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an aux track so that I can actually kind of manipulate the audio on that particular bus. So let's go into the track section again. Let's create a new track and let's make that a 7.1.4 track. And we're going to have an aux track. And this is once again going to hold the plugins we're going to use in order to convert 7.1.4 into 7th order Ambisonics and then down to binaural. So let's click create here. And then I need to complete the routing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to route the instrument track into a 7.1.4, and then here the input is going to be the 7.1.4 bus. So the next thing I need to do is I need to convert the 7.1.4 down to binaural, and I'm going to go that by going through Ambisonics. So in order to be able to do that, I need a couple of plugins, and the first plugin will be a plugin that can convert the 7.1.4 speaker layout into Ambisonics. Now, unfortunately, there are not a lot of options that you have for such a plugin. Actually, I only know of one, and that is the Audio Brewers encoder. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add an instance of the Audio Brewers encoder. And what we want to do is we want to encode the 7.1.4 signal into 7th order Ambisonics. That's what we want to do. So here we have the encoder. And then I'm going to implement the head tracking, which will be the rotation of the sound field. And after that, I need to convert that down to binaural so that I can actually hear something through the output. Let me first kind of take care of the decoding. So let's close that and let's add an instance of the decoder. And the first decoder I'm going to use, and I'm actually going to switch that later on, but the first decoder that I'm going to use is the Audio Brewers decoder. And the reason I'm going to use that one is because it gives us a very good visual understanding about what is actually happening and how the 7th order Ambisonics audio is actually decoded. So let me just add that here. So we want to kind of decode from 7th order Ambisonics to stereo. So this is the decoder here. And the final thing I need to do is I need to kind of set the output. So I want to set that into the standard output. And that should be everything. So let me just open up Skydust again. Let me just maybe kind of keep that window alive. And let me open up Skydust again. And then I should probably also record enable, oopsie, this one here, and then I also need to kind of use my headphones, otherwise I'm not going to hear anything. And let me choose a nice preset here, and let's see if I hear something. And yes, I do. And as you can see, we have the input here in the decoder, and this is the 7th order Ambisonics signal. So these are essentially 64 channels that you have. Once again, the higher the order, the higher the resolution. So if you are doing what we are doing here, if you want to use Ambisonics in order to implement head tracking of multi-channel audio, it is always best to go with the highest order possible. Now, the next step is that we need to implement the head tracking, and we are going to do that through what's called a rotator plugin. At the beginning, I said that one of the nice features about Ambisonics is that the rotation of the sound field is something that is very, very simple. So there are a lot of rotator plugins out there that allow us to rotate the sound field. And the way we're going to implement head tracking is really not by tracking or not moving the head. We are actually going to move the sound field around us. So in the sense that if we are moving the head to the left, for example, we are implementing that by moving the sound field to the right. And for that purpose, we're going to add a rotator plugin. And the rotator plugin that we want to use should also be a rotator plugin that can receive OSC messages from a head tracker so that we can orient the sound field according to the head position based on how the head is tracked with that particular head tracker. Now, fortunately, there is one such plugin out there that can be used with Pro Tools, and that is the rotator plugin that comes with the SSA plugins. I talked about those in one of my previous videos as well. So let's add an instance of the SSA rotator plugin. I'm going to put it between the encoder and the decoder, because once again, first we're encoding, then we're rotating, and then we're decoding again. So let's add that here, and it's going to be a sound field plugin, and the plugin is called A7 Rotate. And I'm going to leave links to those plugins in the description below in case you're interested. It's a 7th order Ambisonics plugin. And this has a couple of options, and it allows us to communicate with a head tracker via OSC. We are going to use that in a second. It would technically also allow you to use it with a head tracker directly. However, that head tracker is no longer available, so we can simply kind of disable that, and that's fine. And here we would have sort of the rotation that we can apply, and we will see that will controlled by the head tracker itself. But let me first see if everything works okay. And for that purpose, let me once again keep that window alive here. And maybe let's add the decoder here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up SkyDust, and I'm going to simply select a very simple patch. So I'm going to just kind of select the basic sine patch, because I just want to see if the rotation is actually working correctly. And then let's open up the AB decoder here, and let's record enable, and let's see. So essentially I now have this simple sine wave that is in front of me. And if I'm now rotating, I should actually see all these channels move accordingly. So if I'm changing the yaw or the pitch, and that essentially just confirms that the plugin is actually functioning on all 64 channels correctly. The reason I thought this is interesting to show is because these plugins actually sit on a 7.1.4 bus. So Pro Tools is intelligent enough to understand that even though these are higher order Ambisonics plugins that can go up to, that essentially use 64 channels, even though they are sitting on a 7.1.4 bus that only has 12 channels, Pro Tools is actually intelligent enough to route it correctly. So we have 64 channels going from one plugin to another plugin on a 7.1.4 bus, which is actually quite elegant. Now, the final thing I need to do is I'm going to add a head tracker. And so I'm going to add a head tracker to my head and to my headphones, to be exact. And as you know, this is a little bit fiddly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to disappear for a second. I'm going to come back, and after that I have the head tracker on my headphones. So I'm back, and the head tracker is now on my headphones. I'm using the Subware head tracker today, but you could do the same thing with other head trackers as well. You just need to make sure that the OSC messages that are sent out by the head tracker are the correct ones. So with the Subware head tracker, we need to establish communication with this particular plugin. And the way this is done is by first starting up the bridgehead application. And the bridgehead application is responsible for the communication with the head tracker. You can already see that it is tracking my head. If I double click, it resets the position. In the bridge settings, in order to be able to kind of communicate with the head tracker, what we need to do is we need to select the IEM scene rotator yaw, pitch, and roll information. So even though we are not working with the IEM plugins, the plugin is intelligent enough to really understand that communication protocol that is used for the IAM scene translator. And in order to be able to do that, we need to connect. Now we see that the IAM scene rotator preset with bridgehead sends out at port 9000. So the next thing we need to do is, and let me just kind of move that over here so that we keep that in view. So we essentially need to select 9000 here, and then we need to connect. And once we connect, essentially we have the tracking going on, and we see here that everything is tracking correctly. Now I can push the and that's actually one of the nice things about the SSA plugin, that I can essentially click the show more button, and here I will really see the types of messages that it receives. So if you have any issues and you need to do some troubleshooting, you can actually do that here, because it allows you to essentially see that. And that should be everything. So let me kind of maybe show less here again, and then let me reset that. And the final thing I'm going to do is, and this is something that I found out by simply testing around. I found that in this particular application, the AB decoder is not particularly perfect. It does not really kind of give you the best impression. The plugin that I found works better is actually the plugin that is provided by SSA plugins. So instead of the decoder, the Audio Brewers decoder, which is my favorite decoder. For those of you who are watching my channel for some while know that I'm a big fan of Audio Brewers. But in this particular instance, I'm actually going to switch to a different decoder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply, instead of selecting the Audio Brewers decoder, I'm going to select the sound field, the monitor, the 7th order Ambisonics monitor from SSA plugins. It's the A7 monitor, and here we have it. And that should actually now give me a good impression. So let's just see if we hear something. And currently, I think I still have the sine wave going on. So let me once again reset the tracking device. And one of the things that I found in this particular kind of connection between the seventh order Ambisonics conversion and the binaural monitoring with the SSA plugin, this is so far the best kind of immersive experience that I had with head tracking. If you have the chance, I would really encourage you to try that out. I think that is really kind of fairly spectacular the way this works. And let me just switch over to a more interesting preset. So let's see, what do we have? Let's maybe go back to what we had at the beginning, which was, I think, this one, Stars at Night. Right, and let's see. And with that, you have head tracking in Pro Tools. Now, to recap what we did here, we took the 7.1.4 output of Skydust, converted that into 7th order Ambisonics, then rotated the 7th order Ambisonics sound field according to the movement of my head, and then decoded everything down to binaural, and that worked extremely well. And the fact that we could do everything within 7.1.4 bus was actually, or is actually, quite elegant, I think. Arvid kind of did a really kind of nice implementation here. This looks really, really well. But Pro Tools is not the only DAW that can work with 7th order Ambisonics. There's also Reaper, and Reaper is a very popular one, very obviously. So let's have a look on how that actually works in Reaper. Now I'm going to follow the exact same steps that I also followed in Pro Tools. The first thing that I did is I added a track that can hold a multi-channel instance of Skydust. So let's do that. So let's add a track. Now we wanted to change that into 7.1.4, so we need at least 12 channels. So let's turn it into a 12-channel track. And then let's drop an instance of Skydust. Now, when you're working with Reaper, you generally have the selection of different plugin formats. So it's not like in Pro Tools, where you essentially only have the Pro Tools format. Here you have audio units or VST3, or sometimes also VST. In preparing this video, I found that most plugin formats have issues. In particular, I could not get audio units to work correctly, not at that high channel counts. The one thing that I found works consistently, at least for the setup that I'm using here, was VST3 plugins, which is a little bit surprising because there's a lot of discussion out there about the limitations of VST3 plugins when it comes to higher channel counts. But for the plugins that I'm going to use here, these actually, the VST3 plugins actually worked best. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an instance of Skydust 3D in VST3 format. Let's add that here. And because of the way Reaper works, we should already hear something if we play a preset. So let me just see if I'm hearing something. Now this is currently not really kind of giving me a correct output, simply because essentially I'm only hearing 2 channels out of the 12. I have not yet done any conversion whatsoever. We want to have a 7.1.4 output. Now when you put Skydust on a 12-channel track, it will automatically default to 9.1.2. This is not what we want. We actually want to have 7.1.4. So let's kind of switch that over to 7.1.4. And then essentially we are going to do the same things that we did with Pro Tools. So the first thing was we add a new track that will hold all the things that we need to do in order to convert from the 7.1.4 into 7th order Ambisonics and then into binaural. In order to be able to do that here, we need a 64-channel track. So we need to kind of switch that over to 64 channels. So let's kind of get down here, 64, so we need 64 channels here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to route the Skydust instrument, the track that holds the Skydust instrument, into this second track. I'm going to deselect master here. I only want to send it. And then there's one thing that I always forget. In preparing this video, I spent like an hour until I figured out, and something was wrong. And then I figured out that I forgot to tell Reaper that it actually needs to route all 12 channels. So in the routing section here, we need to kind of also tell it that we want to have all 12 channels routed into channels 1 to 12 of the 64-channel track. And then let's complete the setup on the second track. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to add the Audio Brewers encoder. And I almost selected the audio unit. I need to select the VST3 unit, where we have it here. Here, the audio burst decoder. Sorry, encoder. And then that should go from 7.1.4 to 7th order Ambisonics. So we need to select the input signal, that is 7.1.4. The output is going to be 7th order Ambisonics. Then we're going to add the rotator plugin. So let me just kind of add the A7 rotate plugin. Add. And then we're going to add the monitor plugin. So let me just see. I still have Bridget open here. Bridget is communicating on port 9000, so let me switch that over to 9000. Whoopsie, did not take. Sometimes it refuses to take in the port number. So let's see if we actually get information. Yes, we do. And then let's just kind of play our Skydust. So let's maybe do the basic sine wave so that we have some understanding that we actually hear something. So this is now in front of me. And that works perfectly fine as well. So either way, if you're working with Pro Tools or Reaper, if you have multi-channel audio that you want to monitor with head-tracked binaural audio, then this way of going through 7th order Ambisonics gives you the best impression. And I found that the SSA plugins actually, for that particular setup, give you the best result. But this is really everything I wanted to say today. Thanks again for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please use the comment section below or join our Discord community. Invite link is in the description below. And with that being said, see you at the next video.